Video we'll be going over IRS Form 709, Schedule C. So IRS Form 709 is the gift tax return, or formerly known as the United States gift or generation skipping transfer tax return. So Schedule C has to do with something called the deceased spousal unused exclusion amount and restored exclusion. We'll talk about those in just a moment. But this is a pretty straightforward schedule. So if you do have a spouse or a former spouse that predeceased you after December 31st, 2010, then any unused gift or estate tax exclusion can be ported over with a portability election, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, and be used by the surviving spouse. So in this case, we've got two deceased spouses, and we're going to go through those situations. But basically, because the different reporting thresholds and exemption thresholds and the change every year, this can be a little bit complicated, but there are instructions that help you do this calculation. So what we're going to do is we're going to calculate any unused exclusions that you're still entitled to, or in this case, John Doe, and then we're going to calculate the applicable credit, and we'll determine where to put that in the tax computation. So John Doe has two deceased spouses. His most recent one was Sue Ann, and you always put the first or the most recent deceased spouse in part one, and then if you have any other deceased spouses, then you would list them in part two. So Sue Ann Doe, her date of death, she did make a portability election, so you can talk. So there may be reasons why a portability election wouldn't be made, but generally speaking, it's usually a good idea to do that. So in this case, he received her unused spouse exclusion, which was $5.6 million, and then the amount that was applied to lifetime gifts was $1.6 million. And we put the date of the gifts. In this case, we'll put that, 1/31/2024. Actually, this would have been, let's just say that was a little bit earlier there. And then in this one, we'll just put that this was in 2015. So in Nancy Doe's case, she was the previous predeceased spouse, and she passed away in January of 2015, made the portability election. He received less of that portability or unused exclusion than he did from Sue Ann. So the amount that was applied to lifetime gifts was $100,000, and you only put the year here. So in this case, we're going to tabulate all of this. So we start with the donor's basic exclusion amount, which is whatever the exclusion amount is for the current year. And then we're going to use column E, parts 1 and 2. This is the unused exclusion amount that is being applied to his gifts. And then, so both his current year gifts and any past year gifts that he's had. So you would have to do that calculation offline using the gifts that are reported in Schedule A. So if we remember Schedule A, we have all of the different gifts in chronological order. So we've already completed Schedule A, hypothetically speaking, and then we're just determining how much of this unused exclusion we're applying to that. And then restored exclusion amount is kind of like the deceased spousal unused exclusion, except it's specifically for same-sex marriages that were originally not recognized when the law to authorize deceased spousal unused exclusions was passed. But then a few years later, a landmark Supreme Court case overturned the existing federal marriage law and recognized same-sex couples as having equal rights to married couples. And so any marriages where there was a predeceased spouse during that time frame, roughly between 2010 and 2013, those would have a restored exclusion amount. So, long story short, if you weren't in a same-sex marriage that was originally impacted by the Defense of Marriage Act that was repealed by the Supreme Court decision, you're probably going to have a 0 here. So in line 4, we're going to add the 3 different lines. Again, we're calculating the total exclusion that John Doe has based on his amount plus any prior predeceased spouses. So instead of the normal 13.6 million, he's got an additional 1.7 million. So that brings it up to this 15.31 million. And we calculate the credit for that using a table in the instructions right here. This is the table for computing gift tax. So one of the things I was forced to remember in both my tax training and my financial planning training was the estate tax with a 40% tax rate. That's not the overriding tax rate. That is the highest marginal tax rate. So once you get to a taxable amount over $1 million, the rest of it's taxed at 40%. Anything less, and there are these different calculations that you would use similar to tax tables on a Form 1040 return. So when we do this calculation, I arrived at 5.724. We would enter this amount here, and then we would also enter it in line 7 of part 2. So we go all the way up to part 2, and we see that we've started some of this information up here, and we're going to put the applicable credit amount right there. So that's it in a nutshell for Schedule C. You would see that there's a pretty outsized exclusion amount. And again, this is kind of a running tab for people that continuously file gift tax returns. You're just adding this year's layer of tax calculations on to a running tab when it comes to the gift tax return. So that's all we have for Schedule C. We'll put links in the show notes to articles and resources that we've created about tax forms that are relevant here as we roll out the videos for each part of Form 709. You may have to search on the YouTube channel a little bit to find the missing schedule. But once I've completed all of the videos, we'll put them all together in a playlist and we'll update the show notes accordingly. So if you go from one schedule and you want to see another one, it should be there in the show notes. So as I mentioned, if you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, or if there's another topic that you'd like to see in an upcoming video, please hit me up in the comments section. Thank you very much and have a great day.